All right, we're gonna get going soon here, guys. Um, this is a recap or a redo of yesterday's fatal flaw in our event. Um, there with JobTread, we had some technical issues. We shared the wrong link. Kind of a silly mistake, but yeah, hopefully I can recover from my mistake there yesterday, and we'll be able to deliver some value for everybody today that's here and live on the stream. So I'm going to get going here in just 2 minutes. We'll give it 2 minutes and we'll get rocking and rolling. Hey Kevin, how's it going, man? Greg?
Yeah, it's going good. Got a good maybe insurance job here to look at, so
Oh yeah, right on.
I try to get that one dialed.
Okay, let's get rocking, guys. Appreciate everybody coming today. It's a topic hopefully is near and dear to your heart as it is to mine. Hopefully bring some light to how we can make some dramatic improvements in our business. Before we get going here, I'm going to share with everybody in the chat a workbook to follow along with. Um, Let me share that with everybody and grab that out of the chat. We'll also attach it to the event when we're done. All right. So today we're discussing how to cut the onboarding time by 80%. But before we get into the topic of onboarding, out of curiosity, how many of you guys on this call right now, give me a one in the chat, were officially onboarded into your trade when you started your career? Were you provided any onboarding? Anyone give you a pathway or a training method? I know I come from the generation of shut up and work. And if you're here tomorrow, then you've got a job. There was no training. There was, I mean, to be honest with you, it was a pretty hostile environment. And we've got to kind of wonder why construction is so far behind when you look at other trades, right? So even in the electrical HVAC where they have formal training and requirements, when it gets to the company level, that's where things kind of fall apart. And to kind of get this rolling, um, I want to share with you guys a real quick story that I have. A couple years ago, we hired a brand new PM. Anybody that's had the pleasure of hiring a new PM knows that it can be turbulent, especially when you expect them to come fully loaded, ready to go. Um, no attention required, which we obviously found out that is not the great method. So again, having not had any sort of onboarding or any experience, it's always been sort of trial by fire. And as a company at the time, we just started with JobTread. Um, we decided that I was going to take the same format, the same approach, and found out very, very quickly, almost instantly, really, just how bad of an idea that was. So we bring in this brand new PM. At the time, JobTread didn't have the training videos, but basically I said, hey, you can look it up in their manual. I need you to send a PO to our metal supplier, and told them the job. Okay, and again, started to kind of give them tasks, right? Things to do as the new PM because that was our style back then. And went about my day. So the PO got sent. I didn't think anything about it. Um, and the order was placed. It was supposed to be delivered on Monday. On Friday, checked in with the PM. Yep, yeah, everything's ordered, everything's good. All right. Come Friday, and I got roughly a $60,000 order, wrong color, no returns. So $60,000 worth of red steel. And the reason for that is because of a number code, a QR code that was in our JobTread that the supplier had a different code in their system. And lo and behold, we have red steel when I needed charcoal gray. So, obviously a little panicked. I call the supplier. There's absolutely no returns. I have to basically try and sell now $60,000 worth of red metal. Anybody that knows the metal industry knows that's not the most popular color in the world. It actually took me, I think I still have stock of that red steel to today. And at that point, you start to learn some things through pain. All right. And the whole idea today is to learn from my pain and start to apply things, all right, at whatever level you're at, so that we don't end up in these kind of situations. So the lesson learned was it wasn't his fault. It was mine, right? So when you set someone up in your business and you fail to explain and you leave gray area and room for mistakes, all right, room for poor leadership, or you lead with you shoulda, you coulda, all right, I promise you, you're going to have slow onboarding. You're going to have high turnover. All right, you're going to have a lot of mistakes that you pay for, in various different ways. So what's the real cost of onboarding a new employee? What's the real cost of onboarding a new subcontractor? I mean, onboarding a new vendor, really, right? When I'm using this, I've really, had to step back and look at what does it actually cost, all right? What's good look like, you know? And the way I boil it down is, time. Okay. So first, when you're starting off in the first 6 weeks, all right, you take a regular PM. Let's just use a PM as the example. All right. Paying him, a regular PM salary, about 1,827 bucks a week in my world. All right. Times 6 weeks. We have a a salary deficit there where we're just personally training them. If you don't have these systems in place, if you don't have these processes in place where you can start to kind of manufacture your new employee, the cost to you is nothing less than about, I would say, 11 grand when we start to think about the hours and the loss of productivity. Okay. Now let's go to what does it cost in your time? All right. So if you're onboarding a new employee, and again, we don't really think about these things a lot. We just kind of, plow through it. But let's just assume that, you're a very cheap CEO and your time's only worth 150 bucks an hour. Okay. And I would say that's on the very low end. Oh, and so at times about 48 hours roughly, and that would be on the low end as well. That would be a very quick, brief onboarding period. So we're talking about $7,200. Okay. And then all the little things that get, that you have mistakes on, right? Assuming that somebody can put in a budget or manage a budget, especially in JobTread and in these other advanced tools. Okay. I would say again, there's going to be a couple of mistakes. There's going to be gray areas, there's going to be things they're not efficient at. It's impossible for somebody to come in fully loaded to your business. Again, I think the expectation is that, everybody's going to find a unicorn that just comes in and automatically, can contribute profitably to their business without any hard work. And I'd say you're sorely mistaken. And you're also setting yourself up long term for even more damage and the inability to scale. All right. So all in, I mean, in the total, leakage on the low end, we're talking like $30,000. All right. That's what we're losing in the inefficiency. All right. Now let's think about the opportunity here. The opportunity of getting somebody up and fully productive in a shorter period of time. Okay. Not to mention, like somebody like a PM brings about 150 to $250,000 worth of gross profit to your business on average. Okay. But the period of time that they are going from, start to efficient, all right, that's the period of time and the draw and the inconvenience and the time consuming and all the other factors that go into it. All right. If we could take that period and reduce it down, all right, and have a system where People can be manufactured, all right? Staff members or, people that you've been offering opportunities to can actually come up through your ranks, all right, without you doing the heavy lifting. Because again, give me a one in the chat here if you guys have a large amount of time on your hands to do these things. Like who here has, you know, 16, 20 hours a week to kind of put into this, into onboarding, or who thinks they would have the time to just continue to onboard? I I don't think anybody here does. Okay. And it's not a great use of your time, right? So we think about the slow ramp period, the time sunk into this and doing it inefficiently. And we start to think about your time, all right, even a manager's time. And, the costs get up there pretty quick. All right. I would say that the average company is hiring about three people in different roles, various roles across across your business. So three new hires here, essentially are costing you about $91,000, right? Doing it sort of the old way. Okay. And the old way in 6 weeks with no real guidance, you're going to still be facing a number of issues, a number of problems down the line. Okay. What I see most often, and we come across quite a bit is, contractors who hire people expecting them to already know the role. All right. Maybe they work for a competitor and then they come in and all of a sudden they're shocked to find out that, hey, I have to teach them every little thing. And, some of those things, some of those processes, especially when we're talking about JobTread and we're talking about CRMs, a lot of times the owners aren't even clear on what those things are. All right. So today's all about coming up with a system that's simple, efficient, all right, that can be used at every level. Now I know contractors that are probably listening in, they're they're all at various different levels, right? So my goal today is to give you at least some value, no matter where you are. And I'm going to say the most important rule here: done is better than perfect. Okay. Too many times we try to shoot for production and really nothing gets done. All right. So I would take, a very short SOP or maybe a messy SOP over a no SOP at all. Okay. So we got to get over that need to be perfect. And the other part of this is onboarding requires us to take the knowledge out of our head. All right. Once the once you've documented a process, all right, you can now delegate. And this is the key. All right. A lot of us are struggling with being the doers in our business. And the reason we're struggling with being the only doer and having those thoughts in our head where we're saying, "Hey, I'm the only one that can do this." And again, it's a limiting belief. And I see, contractor after contractor tell me over and over again, "I'm the only one that's good that can do our sales. I'm the only one that, can run a job. I'm the only one." And I have to kind of sit back and I have to challenge you on it. Right? I have to really make you think hard about this. Why are you the only one? All right. And what we often find, what we see the most, is number one, it's the inability to manage change. That's the first thing I would say. A lot of contractors are stuck because they have these limiting beliefs around delegating and having somebody else come in and take over a big part of their business. Right? They don't have a lot of trust, and really where that lack of trust is coming from is a broken process. Right? I can trust my process, right? When you have a good process, it doesn't completely rely on people. Okay. So it's not typically the people, it's the process, right? So we've kind of got into a little bit of what the lost time and the productivity is for a new hire, right? So we've got that cost in our head, and as owners, we need to be looking at that, right? Where can we buy back our time? Where can we find more time? Because time is money, right? So today's all about, how do we scale the business? How do we grow the business without it all being on us? Okay. Most contractors, I'm going to say that, really stall and have the biggest struggle. I would, from my experience, working with hundreds of contractors, but also my own personal experience running a contracting business, the hardest place to get past is that $2 million mark. And the reason why is because when you hit $2 million, roughly, and again, this is a little different for each trade, right? You have to work through people, right? No long, the business is now bigger than you. All right. And this is where most contractors really, really lose focus of what's going to get them beyond that point. All right. Now, I can also tell you it's much easier to operate a $5 million business than it is to operate a $2 million business. Okay. So our goal should be to move through this, this stability and find or through this startup phase into stability as quickly and as efficiently as possible. I'm going to share with you the exact formula that I used. And how we managed to, move the business without it costing me more and more time. Okay. So when we think about um, what the system should be, all right, I want to keep this really, really simple. It's about taking all of the processes, all of the procedures, all right, all of the things that you're doing in your head, maybe well, maybe not, all right, and getting them organized so that we can delegate them, all right, so we can get them off of our plate, so we can buy back our time, all right. This is what we're going to call knowledge base. Okay. So the knowledge of your company, if that's in your head, all right, that's cool. That's fine for now. All right. The challenge today, all right, is to use at least some of the opportunities here to get that knowledge out of your head. All right. And assume that you're going to delegate every role in your company. All right. The second, we're going to develop an SOP and train new hires. Okay. So when we're developing an SOP, I think there's a lot of misconceptions around SOPs, what they are, what they're not, what's good, what's bad. I want to clarify it, from my perspective, anyways. All right, an SOP is a standard operating procedure, okay, but it doesn't have to be, a written operating procedure. All right, we all have probably the most powerful SOP creator in our pocket right now, right? We all could pull out a cell phone and create an SOP in 5 minutes. Okay. And we've effectively created something that someone else can repeat. Okay. Again, this is the whole point of this is to make it simple. All right. Something that you're going to actually do. Get over your need for perfection here. All right. If somebody can follow it, all right, somebody understands it, and you don't have to repeat it, okay, to get it off your plate, and you can fully delegate it. All right. That is success, right? We can reiterate and improve from that point. All right. But my challenge today is pick one thing that you're doing right now. All right. One thing that you know you shouldn't be doing. All right. And shoot a video on how to do it. Okay. Sometimes this could be the least amount of time, 2 minutes, 3 minutes. Okay. And now you never have to repeat to somebody or show somebody how to do something again. All right. That's, that's in my books a big win. All right. And it helps you to kind of get the effectiveness of SOPs. Okay. So again, SOPs can also be written. They can be connected. There's levels to it, of course. All right. The more advanced your business gets and the more, you have to add layers of complexity to it, these become more and more advanced. All right. But if you're just starting out, all right, all I want you to do and think about is getting one or two things that are taking a lot of time. I often say find the ones that you get asked the most questions about. All right. It could be stupid things, right? Could be, loading the truck or, where certain inventory items are. Okay. Pull your cell phone out, create the SOP as if you're training that person to do the exact thing. Okay. Um, Now, when we're creating the new SOPs for a new hire, I want you to think about going through their experience in their shoes. I want you to really imagine yourself coming from that perspective. So we're going to create an onboarding process for your company, and we're also going to make it role specific. Okay. And then in a few minutes, I'm going to be showing you some more advanced things. I'm going to give you guys kind of a real quick warning as I get into some shiny objects here. Okay. As I said to you from the very beginning, don't get caught up, all right, on, AI and tech and everything else. If you're not at that level yet, don't worry about it. Okay. As well, when it comes to AI, as always, all right, I want you guys to think about ROI. Okay. A lot of times, and a lot of the stuff that's out there is still very speculative. Okay. Meaning I can't attach a direct ROI to it. All right. The systems I've been showing you today, a little bit more advanced. Okay. And you've got to pick your lane. Okay. Running out and creating some of these systems might not be well worth your time. All right. But creating the SOPs, creating the roles. These are fundamentals to operating a business or having a business that can operate without you. All right. This next part is I'm going to show you how to actually take your onboarding process and connect it inside of JobTread, which will be pretty cool. All right. How we've been able to use onboarding and an onboarding system within JobTread. All right. To keep everything on track. All right. So a task-based management system that's hands off, as well as the training, the training modules that go with it. Okay. The other thing we want to think about is reducing mistakes. All right. So if you have something, again, a sales process, a sales to production process, all right, those are the places you want to start first. Okay. Why? 90% of the problems that occur in the field are a result of poor sales to production handoff. All right. When I go into most businesses, I can almost guarantee you, it doesn't matter the size, I can find the most low-hanging fruit and the most improvement in that sales to production handoff. Okay. So if you're going to focus your time and take anything from today to take action on, I want you to focus on either on your sales process itself or the sales to production handoff. Okay. And then the next part is we want to get a team member to actually run the process. Okay. So again, what I see a lot of is owners that really lean into these things and they make them too complex. All right. They write 20-page SOPs, especially if they're using AI, because they can create content. All right. But it has no context. Okay. So I'm going to say that again. It's content without context. All right. The other thing I see a lot is relying on the large language models, the ChatGPT and the Claude to create these things, but not properly prompting them, not making them specific to your business. Okay. So again, the last rule to it is there is no such thing yet as an unsupervised AI. Okay. If you're using the LLMs to create SOPs and you're not actually reading through them and imagining them being applied, all right, I I would highly encourage you to stop that. Okay. Creating a whole bunch of content, right, that no one's ever going to follow is not worth your time. It's not worth the tokens you're going to use either. Okay. We have to be very intentional and simple scales, complicated fails. Okay, so I know I gave you a couple of rules there, but let's get a little bit further into this. Okay, so this is my four-step onboarding system. Okay, this is the same one that we use for all of our clients, and we basically compartmentalize these things in building, any operating system or any process, any onboarding system. The first thing is we've got to capture what the thing is. Okay, so in the workbook you will see, right? Let's make it simple. Something within the sales to production handoff, something you've been asked 40 questions about. Okay. How do I do this? How do I do that? That's where we want to start. We want to capture that. Okay. Now, does it have to be complicated here? No, not at all. Let's take a simple, find something simple that's, maybe, simple in your eyes, I guess, but we want to capture that, get it out of your head. The next, all right, we want to make this role specific. Who owns it? Right? So is it under a role like a PM? All right. So again, when we're doing a ordering process, all right, who owns that? Who's going to be responsible for it? Okay. This also helps the GPT to, focus in on role specific training, especially for onboarding. Okay. Or the LLM. I've given you a little work book there, or an area in the workbook where you can go through again and actually prompting the LLMs properly to come up with these outlines in this training. Okay. The second part, all right, we want to deploy. Okay. So again, when I'm saying deploy, all right, this means testing. This means getting it out. All right. Oftentimes when we're writing SOPs, we use outside sources. All right. So if I want to know if a process is going to work, all right, I don't use somebody that's already in the business and already has a general idea of it. I try to find someone outside of the business, all right, because they're going to, or not connected to the process at all. They're going to be able to tell me, pretty quickly if there's roadblocks. All right. So if they can't follow it through, and another way to look at this is again on the simplicity scale, we should be writing these things at a grade 3 level. All right. You want to write them in a way that, your 12-year-old niece can follow along. Okay. Again, with the LLMs, bear in mind, all right, you can prompt them to write like at a very simple level. Okay, so that next part is train. All right, and we're going to talk about the systems of delivering that training and how to make it really, really efficient. Okay, we also want to make sure that anybody that we are onboarding and training, all right, that we are um, as much hands off as possible. And I'm going to explain to you why we need to have that insulation in just a second. All right. But we need to have accountability there as well. Okay. So let's move on here. So in step one, again, if you're using the workbook, you can use the form as well. We're going to capture it, get it out of your head. All right. Step two, we're going to generate a role specific package. All right. So who are we directing this towards? Project manager, field manager, subcontractor. Okay. Getting their tasks, the things they will be responsible for. If those things are currently on your plate, all right, even if you haven't made this hire, now's the time to really start to get those things into those roles. Now, just a quick note here, something I see quite often, all right, is most of us, when we're starting out especially, all right, tend to hire people and then try to fit a role around them. Anybody made that mistake before? All right. And the result of that, okay, is generally catastrophic, right? Is finding out that, hey, my sister, my brother, or my mother, my niece should probably not be my accountant or bookkeeper, responsible for managing, you know, multi-million dollar business, right? I'm sure other people have made that same mistake, all right? Or, the person that I hired, I thought, maybe could be great at sales, but all of a sudden we find out they're not. Okay. So the reason we want to, as business owners, create roles first, all right, is it allows us to actually then find someone who actually fits that role. Okay. It's somebody that can own all of the tasks and the responsibilities, and these SOPs, you know, in those roles and positions. Okay. So just a quick rule of thumb there, to follow when we're thinking about, designing these, um, onboarding packages. Okay. Now we're going to get to the AI and how AI can use, actually answer questions. So again, we're going to go from, creating the role to actually when we deploy it. All right. And then the last thing, actually, I'll show this one a little bit before, but we're going to talk about how we can implement this into our job tread. Okay. So hopefully you guys can see my screen. I just got to make a quick switch here. All right. So let's start off with, what a good onboarding system could look like for most of you role specific. Okay. Now, just to give you some context to what you guys are seeing here. All right, this is a system that we built here at Contractor AI, for the majority of our members. Okay, and we try to make this very role specific. Now, what the objective here is, all right, is we're going to provide a video training. We're going to actually use AI to create that training. All right, so once we have the SOP, we have the documentation, we've got the stuff out of your head. All right, and you've approved that and it's specific to a role. Well, now we can go to work kind of getting a little more advanced. And I'm going to show you what that could look like. Okay. So this is actually the exact system we use here at J Carter Roofing, as well for our members. But you can see the way I've broken it down, all right, is by lessons, role specific with a particular outcome of each module. Okay. So we've made our videos, quite advanced, but even the voice within it, all right, it's me, all right, but I've used AI. Okay, so it's AIJ, we'll call it. All right, and I've been able to build out these modules, all right, which is the knowledge base for that role, all right, all out of my head, all, again, we've used, video editing. I don't know if I can get any more into that, but just to kind of give you the gist, there's AIJ, right? Doesn't have to be pretty. Done's better than perfect, we'll say. All right. But if you're the person going through this, all right, day one, All right. You're not coming in, as a new PM without being fully educated on how our systems and how our operations work. Okay. So the other things that are included here, which you'll see quite a bit, right, is the actual SOP, right? So again, we're going to document everything. All right. And the reason I'm going to do this, okay, is that I want to have full accountability. I don't want my new hire coming to me and asking me questions that I've already trained here. Okay. I want them to have a resource that they can go to, that doesn't involve, coming to me or coming to one of our managers. All right. And I'm going to share with you a real quick story, shortly here at the end of how this could look in your business. Um, but you kind of get the gist here. Now we've got a quiz. All right. All right. So for each one of these modules, there's a short quiz that they take. This is now my record of training. Okay. So again, if they come to me, all right, and they've passed their test, they passed all of the information in here, okay, and they're asking me questions, where do you think I'm going to point them back to? Okay. Do they need to come to me? Now, here's the advanced level to that. Okay. Once you have all of these role specific trainings and you have your modules and you have everything set up, we use an off server AI. Okay. So it's an AI that's basically exists, in a controlled environment. So it's not off the LLM. It's not being, it's not like going to ChatGPT and asking it questions about your stuff. It's only trained on your specific data, your specific SOPs. Okay. And the reason we do that, okay, is that I want them, and we have the ability and the technology now. If I get stuck on something, I've got somebody to ask. All right. And that person they're asking, or that AI, I shouldn't say person, all right, is neutral third party. Okay. Like I said to you before, it's really important that we have, a non-threatening, um, opportunity where they can ask questions. Okay. So coming back to my story I started off with in sharing about my PM that made the $60,000 mistake. You know, when I went back to him and asked him, you know, what had happened, we kind of went through it. You know, it turned out that he actually knew about the mistake on the Friday when I could have canceled the order. Okay. And his direct words to me is he didn't want to get in trouble. He didn't want to let me down. Okay. So me being in a superior position, all right, creates that tension where people don't want to, let their boss know that maybe they don't know. All right. So what ends up happening is they avoid it. All right. Not the best of traits, and people, act and respond differently. But again, had he had, the support, the information, all right, a place to go, and, didn't feel threatened, didn't feel like I would look down on him or be stupid or anything silly like that. All right. That problem would have never occurred. Okay. And in fact, we know this because we've since implemented it, within our business and with other people's businesses, where we take a very, specific role like, PMs, estimators, all right, and we've put this thing to the test. Okay, so I'm going to share with you really how this entire experience has worked out for us. In my business, I have two major risks. We have two senior PMs, okay, both making about 160K a year. All right, both getting a little bit older, amazing at their job, amazing at what they do. Okay, but I know eventually they're going to move on. Okay, as all staff will one day. Okay. And it's very difficult to transfer their knowledge. It's very difficult to find people that have the same kind of experience. Okay. So, what was our solution to this, especially when we were rolling this out in J Carter Roofing? All right. Is we ran a test. And most people would say I'm pretty crazy for doing it, but I hired somebody completely outside of the industry, completely outside of roofing, period. He was a truck driver, had a great, had all of the characteristics we were looking for. All right. But had no actual roofing experience, is actually afraid of heights. Okay. And we put this whole process to the test. Okay. And what we did is essentially we set them up with this exact modules, these exact training that I'm showing you right here. Okay. Very specific. And then we stepped back and we said, now, we have an escalation process here. So escalation, here's 4 levels of it. All right. Level 4 escalation was the only one he could come back to an operations manager for. And by the way, our level 4 escalation is we've lit a building on fire. The fire department's coming. All right. You better come down. And all right. So pretty big thing. So basically, don't come back to us. We want to see you independently with your AI and see if you can manage the job. And then we measured. Okay. So again, documented, right? So that we could delegate, right? Measure so you can manage, right? And the key KPIs that we were measuring, number one, all right, was budget variance. Okay, so this is something that's done within JobTread. Very important number in any management accounting system to know if your PM is on track. So what a variance is the difference between what was budgeted for the job and what it actually came out to be. All right. So a PM does a big part of defense, making sure that jobs stay on budget. Okay. I'm happy to say when we measured this KPI, our PM was able to keep his variance within 5.6%. Okay. Now, on the other hand, senior PMs, 6 and 7% apiece. Okay. So the very first major KPI, he was able to exceed our expectations. Okay. The second one, all right, with schedule variance, especially when you're managing, cash flow, you're going through and your business is growing. All right, you have to keep on track of your WIP. You have to be able to, schedule clients. All right, you have to be able to look and live 3 months in the future. Okay, if you have a PM that can't keep projects on track, all right, and can't call the shots, all right, what's going to happen is you're going to have, you know, cascading problems. But that's a very important KPI for us. I'm happy to say after 90 days of having him run this job brand new, all right, we had a 2-day variance. All right. So again, over 90 days to have only a 2-day variance in the roofing industry is pretty good. Okay. The other PMs were in that ballpark. All right. I'm not going to say they did too much worse off than that. They were about level, about equal. The other area that we looked at was customer satisfaction. Okay, so how satisfied were our clients after working with our brand new AI-driven PM? And the answer to that was we had a 93% customer satisfaction rate. All right, my other senior PMs, they were 89 and about 85% in terms of customer satisfaction. Okay. The last thing that we measured, which I feel like was one of the most important things, was the number of escalations. Okay. So as I said, we have 4 levels of escalation. All right. How many of those, how many of those things became escalated? All right. So the best way I can explain it is with a PM, it's the focus on the small details that matter most. Because if you don't focus on the small details, which is hard to get through to new PMs quite often, the big things come out. All right. Meaning if you didn't respond to a client or you didn't, follow through on a promise you made, all right, that's going to escalate into something bigger. Okay. That's going to, they're going to go over you. They're going to, call management. They're going to, they're going to escalate that if you haven't met their expectations. All right. So we try to get the PMs focusing on meeting those customer expectations day in and day out and not allowing things to escalate. All right. Not allowing things to go through the levels of escalation in the business. And we are happy to say that he had, fewer than 30 level 2 escalations. He only had about 5 level 3, okay, which is again in the world of roofing and contracting, that's pretty good on our scale. All right. Our other PMs, obviously, they had well, not obviously, they did have much higher rate of escalation. Again, we found that a lot more things were falling through the cracks, to say the least. Okay. The other interesting statistic that we discovered with this, just over 13,000 chat conversations. That's 13,000 in a 90-day process. So those are individual back and forth conversations. A lot of tokens burned on it. I won't lie, but you can imagine he was using this the agent pretty much all day, every day. Okay, for everything, just double checking himself, you know. And again, we do use agents that are able to do things for him as well, which is pretty cool. All right, but overall was very satisfied with the results. And what it concluded for me, all right, is a big problem within construction, a big problem I think every owner faces in terms of scaling their business and growing their business, all right, is how do we, replicate ourselves? How do we create carbon copies of ourselves or get our knowledge out of our head and have somebody able to actually use it? Okay. Has anyone ever had that thought? Like, I wish I could just have another one of me. Anybody ever had that idea? If I could just have one more of me, right? So this is one of the things that AI does allow us to do now, all right? And think about the future, all right? If you can capture a knowledge base, all right, even if it's role specific, is that an asset to your business? Do you think one day somebody will buy the knowledge or the experience of your company, right? Especially if it could be, made synthetic. Do you think have larger business? We should always be thinking about our exit. We should always be making our companies liquidable. Okay. And what I mean by that, all right, is the assets that create a real business, the ability to scale, the ability to, manufacture employees. That is exactly what evaluations are built on. Like, is the owner the center of the business, or, can you train someone else to actually operate the business without you? Okay. I don't think anybody here, I hope not, has come in and wants less freedom. All right. Wants to work more in their business. Do they? Anybody here? No? Okay. So I think we all start out with that dream that, hey, you know what? We're going to start a business and we're going to have all this time and freedom. And then, reality hits and we realize that we have much, much less. And we spend years and years struggling for that. And that's because we can't duplicate ourselves. Okay. So what you're seeing now and where the opportunity is, all right, where we want to kind of keep, our eye on the bigger picture here is when you create these systems, you're creating an asset for your business. You're creating, more than just an SOP or a training. You're creating an organized system, all right, that will one day be what's going to be evaluated, right? And again, like I said, even if you don't plan to sell your business, you want to keep your business, all right? Having your business being in a liquidable state, so somebody could come in and buy it, take it over, all right, is an actual business. If everything's in your head, that is a very expensive, stressful job, okay? And you will feel stuck for a long period of time. So let's talk a little bit about how we move the exact thing that I'm sharing you here and what these SOPs, what this training looks like, so you can take some of these ideas yourself. All right, let's start off with JobTread. Okay, so again, I'm showing you a bit of content here. Okay, but how do you take the content that we're sharing and actually apply it to the context of a day-to-day operation? Okay. So JobTread has a really, really cool, setup. It's, once you get it, it's really, really powerful in terms of, tracking tasks, understanding, what has to be done and what priorities. Most people, I would say, really underutilize some of these features. So a schedule template, for example, when you win a project, all right, we should have a pre-production process, right? Especially if you have a new hire in place. Okay. So what you're looking at here is our pre-production process. As you can imagine, this is a lot of stuff. This is just to take one job from sold, all right, to production. Now, why does it look so complicated and look so busy? Because what I've done and what we've been able to do, all right, is create each task and provide the training, provide the information for it, break it down into really bite-sized pieces, all right, and then assign it to a person based on time. Okay. So each day they come in, all right, I'm not having to remind them of, hey, did you do this? Did you do that? Did you do this? No, 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 no. We don't do that. Even though they took all the training in the module, they got the big picture of what's expected, but that's a lot of information all at once. Okay. It's hard to create, habits and, to know exactly what you need to do or what's expected of you without having a tool like JobTread on the other end of it to tie it in. Okay. So again, it's simple things that these are check boxes. All right. So they get it in their to-do list. right? They know where the scheduled date is and when when it has to be done by. But more importantly, what we've done is we actually put the documents for this training directly in there because we know there's going to be some things that they forget or that they have to go back to. So, I mean, between the AI and this, they know exactly, all right, or they can get that content directly in their hands. So let's just take an example of this. So our material ordering purchase policy. Okay. Now, what I'm showing you here, guys, is an actual real document we use quite regularly. You guys can see my screen? Yeah. Oh, all right. So the way we utilize this, oh no. Oh, okay, is we have it in step by step. Okay. And each step has a visual video to it. And I don't even need to open this. All right. So again, like the videos I showed you, but it goes step by step. All right. Meaning that I leave no room for them to be confused, lost, or to misunderstand it. Okay. They can't come back to me and say, I didn't get it. I didn't know how to do it. Okay. Super important. All right. This is what we call full scale delegation. Okay. Full accountability and full ownership of an entire process, especially something as big as sales to production handoff, right? There's a lot of little details. And the more complex your business becomes, right? The more things you offer, all right, the more and more you require this kind of level of you know, um, understanding. And again, you'd be very surprised, right? How many people that have been, with our company a long time that are using these things, all right? Because maybe they do a task once a month, you know, once every couple of months, right? So especially with JobTread that has amazing features, has a lot of functionality, there's also a lot of complexity. Okay. And whenever we're adding complexity, okay, there's always a risk, and it happens a lot, all right, where people just fail to understand it. They don't have the tools or the content or the context that they need at that moment, and then it doesn't get done. All right. So what the result of that is we get a half implemented system. All right. We get people that are frustrated because the system isn't doing the things that they need it to do. We get owners that are getting bad data back that don't know, can't be data driven because half the people that are supposed to be operating within this system aren't. Okay. This also leaves the pathway open again when you get this kind of clarity and certainty of your steps to have AI manage some of the lower level tasks. Okay. To have AI create reminders. All right. So this is now getting into something again more and more advanced um, where we can actually apply and get things done. Right. So versus just having content being made, all right, we can actually see AI getting things done. We can see AI working well with our employees. Okay. So again, I can just, show you all the way down here. Everything's tied to an SOP. They have a link. Okay. They have a deadline. This is automated, so it pops up right away as soon as the job is won. Okay. And this is how we are applying this practically. Okay. That with their AI and the various agents, it allows me to take somebody that is not necessarily the most skilled. Okay. In fact, can have no knowledge, all right, and produce a really, really high level result. Okay, that keeps the business protected, allows us to scale. All right. How many of you guys have had real problems finding, managers, finding good PMs, finding good technicians? Okay. So again, a lot of what this is addressing here is the problem that we have throughout construction. Okay. And hopefully you guys are taking some of this in and thinking about how you can apply it to your business. All right. But even just getting some of this stuff out of your head, right? Your sales to production handoff, your sales process, all right? Using AI to help to get that really clear. Okay. That is a huge, huge leap forward. Okay. You know, like I said, if you are struggling with this and again, you're really tight for time, you may want to consult with us. here at Contractor AI, obviously we build out these kind of systems and processes so you don't have to. All right. But I don't want anybody here figuring that, having us do it is where we're going with this. I want you to take the small steps that you can today. Okay. Everybody here can take action on something that I've shared. All right. Something that's, going to help their business grow and scale. Okay. Now I've shared a ton of information. I'm going to just flip back to my other screen. Um, oh, yeah. We shared the SOPs. So again, in looking at your SOPs, especially for anything inside of JobTread, I highly, highly recommend the step-by-step. Because again, if somebody doesn't have a reference to go back to and a step-by-step process, or we've been too vague with it, what happens is you get a lot of mistakes. You get a lot of frustration and people just not adapting well to construct or to the software. I would say this is what we deal with a lot across the board is just it's so vast and it has so much features, okay, that if somebody, kind of loses their place there, they get discouraged, and we don't want that, right? So this is just another good example of how they can complete certain tasks, all right? How they can take something, through each step, all right? And what this allows you the ability to do is completely delegate that, all right? Without having that accountability issue, okay? Adding the AI just adds another layer, right, where they can actually use it to locate things, all right? That keeps them on track. There's a lot of other good use cases for it, all right? But now that I've shown you sort of, simple to advanced here, all right? Let's talk about some other things before we wrap this baby up. Okay? So, for everybody that's still with me here and I haven't put you to sleep, all right? We want to talk about sort of the old way, right? The old way, the way that I came through it, and again, I'm being very generous here when I'm saying 6 weeks. I think it was more like 6 months, but I think, I've had employees never really get onboarded, and we've just, never really fully walked them through everything. They still have gaps. Not now in our business, but certainly before we started to build these systems. All right. But 6 weeks to productivity. All right. 40 questions per week, right? 3 callbacks per project, right? That's on the lightest scale that you can imagine as just hiring a PM, all right? Versus a new way, like again, maybe 6 days to be, productive, 4 questions per week and 0 callbacks per project. Is it worth it? Right? Is it worth investing some time into doing these things, even if it's again, if you're doing it yourself, you have someone doing it for you, if you're using AI, like the whole point here is again, the quicker and the more the quicker you get started, all right, the easier this is going to be. And we want to build a culture around this, right? We want to have a business that operates, on this pace and this scale. Because again, if you can build that into your culture, all right, and your staff and employees start to create these yourself, you're going to see a lot more momentum. Okay. So what am I able to offer today? Right? There's always got to be an offer here. Again, uh, not want to make sure that everybody gets something from our chat today. We would, if you are struggling with onboarding or looking to install an advanced onboarding system, all right, we'd love to at least help you get a roadmap. I'm offering a 30-minute call. All right, we can go through kind of what you're doing, what's working, what's not working. All right, and give you a good roadmap there. I'm happy to do this. This isn't a sales call, by the way, guys. I got to be really, really straightforward and honest. These systems, to build out a full-scale system takes a lot of time. I don't have a lot of spots. We only have 5. Okay. So again, it's not going to be a sales call. I'm not, if you're not, if it's not a right fit, I'll tell you right away. I want to really make sure that you're comfortable, happy to deliver value. Again, like I said, a map of your current onboarding. Even the AI prompts I've shared with you, the workbook. So hopefully you can get some value from that. The real numbers. Okay, and our scanned QR code here if you want to take me up on that offer. With that said, we'll leave it at that. Just wondering if anybody has any questions that I can answer for them. I'll take your questions in the chat there too. Yeah, okay. All right. So hopefully no one's triggered by all of the content today. For the JobTread clients, well, I'll let the JobTread take over for that. Okay. If we have no questions, guys, I'm going to thank you all for your time. If you wanted to unmute, any questions that you have, I'm happy to answer them. Awesome. All right, guys. Take care.